Our story begins with Felicie Fenormo, a young noblewoman nervously introducing herself. She sits in a wooden room, carefully writing with a quill pen as she reveals the heavy debt her family owes. Despite her anxious smile, she is determined to face the challenges ahead. The stern man with glasses points firmly at the young woman, demanding her attention. She clutches the papers nervously, clearly stressed under his authoritative gaze. The weight of her responsibilities at the Magic Academy and her family's struggling orchard hangs heavily between them. The young woman with long light hair walks determinedly toward Maze City, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Inside, she sits at a desk, arms crossed and frustration etched on her face as she contemplates her difficult situation. Watching from the shadows, a man with glasses and a sinister grin seems to revel in her struggle. The young woman with long light hair walks thoughtfully down a stone corridor, clutching her papers tightly. Her expression reveals a mix of anxiety and determination as she mentally prepares for the upcoming interview. The grand pillars and floors around her emphasize the weight of the moment. The young woman with long light hair pauses thoughtfully in front of a meeting room door, preparing to check it. Meanwhile, deep inside the labyrinth, the adventurers, one with a cape and another with long hair, launch a coordinated attack on the large, fierce monster. As the man with glasses stands nearby, ready to support, the tension rises as the battle unfolds while she contemplates the changing ideals of adventurers. The young woman with long light hair, clutching her papers, exclaims in surprise, "They're here! See? I told you we were just early." Nearby, the young man with spiky hair reacts with a startled H, while the adventurers and the man in formal attire look on with varying expressions of seriousness and neutrality. The tension rises as the group acknowledges the unexpected arrival. The young woman with long light hair apologizes nervously for being late, while the man with earrings confidently remarks they arrived too early. The adventurer with long hair wonders if arriving early might be rude, and the cheerful young man with spiky hair happily notes how quickly everyone showed up. Meanwhile, the serious adventurer with short hair acknowledges the group's strong motivation. The young woman with long light hair begins the interview, explaining that the job posting is urgent but open to all backgrounds and skills. The adventurers and the man with earrings listen attentively, arms crossed, as she invites a casual conversation. Confidently, she volunteers to be the first to answer questions. The young woman listens attentively as Alma confidently introduces himself, revealing he is 17 years old and once belonged to the notorious Red faction of the Big Four. Surprised by this revelation, she processes the weight of his past while continuing the interview. The young woman, surprised and confused, asks the young man if the conditions with his previous adventure party were better than this job. He laughs and replies that it simply didn't click with him. Their conversation continues in the interview room, the tension easing as they discuss his past experiences. The young man confidently explains his ninja skills and his motivation for joining the job, while the young woman listens thoughtfully, jotting down notes with her quill pen. Their conversation continues in the quiet interview room, focused on understanding his background and reasons. The young man with spiky hair cheerfully reveals that his type is girls with fluffy silver hair, catching the young woman holding the quill pen completely off guard. Nearby, the adventurer with long black hair and a ponytail looks surprised and calls out for the next person after Alma. The young man with spiky hair confidently reveals he prefers companions his own age, prompting the young woman with long light hair to smile with mild surprise and note that they are indeed the same age. Their conversation grows more personal as they find common ground. The young man calmly reveals he was part of the Blue faction of the Big Four, catching both the young woman and the adventurer off guard. The adventurer urgently interrupts with a surprised wait, while the young woman looks shocked, quickly asking if he truly belongs to the Big Four. He confirms with a simple, "Yeah," deepening the tension in the room. The adventurer with long black hair confidently explains that their specialty is speed and shares their motivation for joining the team. The masked adventurer crouches nearby, curiously asking if anyone faster than them exists. The long-haired adventurer then bows politely, expressing thanks and signaling it's now their turn to speak. Oswin, a confident young adventurer with short spiky hair, introduces himself as a 21-year-old who has been adventuring for just over a year and is not from the Big Four guilds. The young woman with long light hair, still an undergrad, looks surprised and acknowledges Oswin as a senior among them. The young man with spiky hair confidently shares a fun fact about academy graduates having a higher chance of happiness after marriage. Catching the young woman with long light hair off guard, she reacts with surprise, questioning whether that detail was really necessary. He then explains his specialization in analyzing magical structures and unlocking treasure chests, prompting her to express genuine surprise and ask about the length of his experience. He confirms he's been adventuring for over a year, moving between smaller parties. Felicie Fenormo ponders quietly, feeling that the situation seems almost too convenient. She then questions the man with short hair and earrings about why, despite his impressive skills, he still operates with smaller parties. He confidently replies that it's highly unlikely for a ninja to maintain a near-perfect solo success rate, explaining the reasoning behind his choice. The young man with spiky hair confidently explains to Aswin that smaller parties pay better by the hour and are more efficient for higher shares. Aswin listens thoughtfully, clearly surprised but understanding the reasoning. Meanwhile, the young woman with long light hair contemplates this logic, silently thanking Aswin for the insight. Matthias introduces himself as a 19-year-old adventurer who has been active for just 1 month, sharing that his type is hard-working people. The young woman with long light hair listens, clearly impressed and thinking Matthias might be amazing. Their conversation takes place in a relaxed indoor setting, hinting at the formation of a new team. The young man with light hair nervously apologizes to Felicie for any rudeness, explaining how he often joins temporary groups and feels intimidated by talented people. Felicie calmly reassures him, saying, "Oh no, not at all," as she listens attentively. The young man with light hair confidently explains that he performs better on secondary objectives and is happy to take on a support or rearguard role. Felicie beams with enthusiasm, expressing her gladness and eagerness to back the group in any way she can. Their positive exchange highlights their growing teamwork and mutual encouragement. Felicie cheerfully announces that their group has been hired after the brief interview. The man with short hair and earrings informs them that the contracts are ready. The young man with light hair asks Felicie when their first mission will begin, and she responds with excitement, eager to start working together. Felicie Fenormo cheerfully urges the group to get going now that they've been hired. The young man with spiky hair, the man with glasses, the adventurer with short spiky hair, and the calm adventurer with a braid all react with surprise and readiness. The team is set to move forward together. The young man with spiky hair explains their plan to start with an easy spot to test the party's cohesion. Aswin voices concern about the difficulty possibly being too much for Matthias, who calmly replies he's ready to go anytime and asks Aswin for confirmation. Felicie Fenormo watches with a confident smile, commenting on the group's reactions as they prepare to move forward. Felicie Fenormo eagerly urges the young man with spiky hair to hurry, so they can get going. He smiles confidently, reassuring her that it's totally fine and agreeing that sooner is better. Together, they prepare to move forward without delay. The young man with spiky hair enthusiastically raises his fist, cheering the group on with spirited encouragement. Nearby, the man with glasses thoughtfully questions whether they truly function well as a team. The adventurers stand together in the dim E-rank labyrinth cave, their resolve growing as they prepare to face the challenges ahead. Felicie Fenormo and the young man with spiky hair exchange shocked glances, both stunned by how effortlessly they have advanced through the labyrinth. Felicie voices her disbelief, while he nods in agreement, sharing her surprise at their unexpected progress. The rocky walls of the E-rank labyrinth surround them as they process this revelation. Felicie Fenormo is stunned, eyes wide with excitement as she realizes the group has earned over 20,000 Turians without facing any enemies. Oswin proudly reveals that he opened every treasure chest they encountered in the labyrinth. Nearby, the young woman with long light hair and a backpack listens quietly, taking in the surprising news. The adventurer with short spiky hair compliments Felicie Fenormo on her impressive running speed, comparing it to passing the ninja exam's high-speed movement section. Felicie blushes in surprise and embarrassment, modestly denying the praise with a nervous laugh. Their friendly exchange highlights her unexpected agility and the growing camaraderie within the group. The young man with spiky hair eagerly raises his hand and shouts, "Let's get going already!" Before bursting into a run, Felicie Fenormo, the adventurer with short spiky hair, and the man with short hair and glasses quickly follow, all dashing forward across the cracked ground. The group moves with determination, ready to face whatever lies ahead. The young woman with long light hair runs determinedly, relying on her strong legs to keep up with the group's sneaky dashes through the labyrinth. She cheerfully raises her fist, recalling how her speed once helped her excel in relay races despite complaints. A thoughtful close-up reveals her focused determination as she reflects on the basics of adventuring and movement. Alma and Shio sprint ahead, their eyes sharp as scouts in the labyrinth. Shio shouts instructions back to the young man with dark hair, who listens intently, while a single-eyed monster blob lurks nearby, spotted by Alma's keen vision. The team's coordination remains tight as they press forward. Oswin expertly carries a treasure chest, his speed in opening them unmatched as they navigate the labyrinth. Mythilus supports the team thoughtfully, managing supplies with ease. Meanwhile, the young woman with long light hair runs determinedly ahead, keeping pace with the swift progress. The young man with spiky hair commands the group to stop with a serious expression, while the determined young woman with long light hair runs forward, her backpack bouncing as she moves. She reflects thoughtfully on joining this exploration and the importance of staying safe. The cracked walls around them hint at the labyrinthine setting they navigate. The young woman with long light hair runs forward, her face marked by surprise and alarm. The young man with light hair covering one eye turns his head, saying, "Ha!" In confusion, meanwhile, the adventurer with short spiky hair looks back cautiously as the serious young man points ahead, signaling an urgent instruction. The young man with spiky hair raises his thumb with a determined expression, signaling the group to stay focused. The young woman with long light hair cautiously peers at the large, horned monster silhouette standing in the tunnel ahead. Nearby, the adventurers and Felici Fenormo nervously peek from behind a wall as a menacing monster blob roars, its sharp teeth and tongue exposed. The young woman with long light hair peeks cautiously from behind a wall, her face filled with shock and alarm. Before her stands the massive minotaur Maze Lord, gripping a huge weapon with fierce aggression. The sudden appearance of this monstrous guardian sends a wave of disbelief through her. The young man with spiky hair, gripping his large sword, commands the young woman with long light hair to take down the monster here. Acknowledging its formidable presence, she looks surprised and alarmed, processing the urgent order amidst the rocky cave surroundings. The tension rises as they prepare to face the monstrous threat together. The young woman with long light hair peeks cautiously from behind a wall, her eyes fixed on a treasure chest nearby. The adventurer with short spiky hair asks the young man with spiky hair how they should handle the chest, confidently. He explains that it's only an E-rank chest and encourages grabbing it quickly. The young man with dark hair explains that to reach the gold chest, they must enter the Maze Lord's line of sight, emphasizing the danger ahead. The young man with spiky hair stresses the need for a clear, fast strategy to avoid a chaotic escape. The young woman listens intently, worried but focused, while the adventurer with short spiky hair confidently confirms Alma's plan to take down the Maze Lord, highlighting his skill in ambushes. The young woman questions if Alma really intends to confront the Maze Lord directly, showing her concern. The young man with spiky hair confidently assures the young woman with long light hair that he can take down a B-rank Maze Lord in a single strike. She looks surprised and doubtful, clearly taken aback by his bold claim. The tension rises in the dungeon corridor as they prepare for the looming threat. The young man with spiky hair confidently asserts to Felici Fenormo that he is dead serious about taking down the Maze Lord, boldly daring them to fire him if he's lying. Felici listens attentively, surprised but focused, while the others stand nearby, absorbing his challenge in the dimly lit cave. The young woman with long light hair, determined and resolute, encourages Alma to take on the challenging task ahead. Alma, focused and serious, listens intently as she places her trust in him. Their resolve strengthens in the dim, stone-walled corridor. Alma, gripping his flaming sword with fierce determination, rallies everyone with a spirited, "That's the spirit." As he prepares to strike, below, Felici Fenormo watches in surprise and alarm, her wide eyes reflecting the intensity of the moment. The tension rises as Alma readies himself for battle on the stone floor. The adventurer with long black hair explains the complex nature of magical swords, emphasizing how their powerful magical mechanisms make them difficult to control. Meanwhile, the large muscular minotaur monster, holding a massive weapon, looks on with a confused expression, questioning with a single word. Felici Fenormo urgently warns Alma to hold back, noticing that the large muscular minotaur monster has spotted them. Undeterred, Alma stands firm, sword raised and ready to strike the imposing beast in the narrow stone corridor. The tension rises as the fierce confrontation is about to unfold. The adventurer with long hair passionately urges Ozw1 to open his eyes wide and truly see the power of the magical sword. Ozw1, sweating and tense, listens intently, clearly surprised by the revelation. Nearby, the young woman with long light hair reacts with a startled, "Huh!" caught off guard by the intensity of the moment. Alma unleashes a fierce, swirling flame attack, shouting "Shine!" with intense determination. His powerful strike, called the Primordial Flame and the Sword of Creation, surges toward the large muscular minotaur monster with horns. The battle rages fiercely inside the structure, with Alma fully focused on defeating the Maze Lord. Felici Fenormo shouts fiercely, her voice filled with determination as the large muscular minotaur monster roars aggressively in defiance. Alma, with a fierce and focused expression, unleashes a powerful attack against the towering beast, pressing the battle forward with relentless intensity. The clash between them crackles with raw energy, marking a critical moment in their confrontation. Alma stands resolute inside the rocky tunnel, gripping his large sword over his shoulder as he gazes ahead with unwavering determination. The air is thick with tension after his fierce assault on the Maze Lord. Alma beams with excitement and determination, shouting a triumphant, "Yes!" as he stands ready with his sword. Meanwhile, Felicity is overwhelmed by a blinding light, tears streaming down her face as she struggles to keep composed. The intensity of the moment is palpable, highlighting the power Alma has just unleashed. Our story continues with the large muscular minotaur monster roaring fiercely, its mouth wide open in a display of anger and defiance. The overwhelming force of Alma's attack echoes through the dungeon, signaling the intense clash between them. Despite the monster's roar, the narration reveals that Alma's surprise strike has technically defeated this E-rank dungeon master. The young woman with long light hair angrily shouts at Alma to stop the glowing effect. Frustrated that it wasn't working as expected, Alma apologizes, assuring her that the control is perfect but the glow doesn't add extra damage. She warns him sharply that they don't have time to waste. The young man holding the locked chest urges the young woman to leave quickly, warning that any loud noise will soon attract the labyrinth's monsters. She reacts with surprise and worry, pleading for a moment longer. The tension rises as they realize time is running out in the rocky tunnel. The young woman with long light hair urgently shouts a warning that enemies have already arrived. The serious young man with short hair commands everyone to run while vowing to hold off the advancing monstrous minotaur and its fearsome allies. The monstrous group snarls and roars menacingly as they close in on the defenders. Tension rises as the young woman urgently warns Alma about the deadly threat posed by the monstrous minotaur. The serious young man advises her to focus on anticipating what will happen rather than panicking, but she snaps back, accusing him of trying to sound cool in a dire situation. Meanwhile, Alma stares intently at the towering beast, preparing for the looming confrontation. The young woman urgently commands Alma to unleash the powerful attack once more, insisting it will cause a big impact. Alma, excited but cautious, asks what exactly to do, calling her leader, and dismissing the official name as unimportant. Meanwhile, Felicity looks apologetic, perhaps uneasy about the escalating situation. Alma confidently tells the young woman he can only perform that special move once a day. The serious young man shouts at the strange chicken-like monster, questioning its strange appearance. Meanwhile, Mythilus is seen running away from the chaotic scene. The young man with light hair urgently insists they need to find a way back, clearly worried about their situation. Mythilus, shouting with alarm, warns that enemies are closing in from the right, signaling they are surrounded. Meanwhile, a group of hostile monstrous figures advances menacingly through the tunnel. The monstrous minotaur creatures rush aggressively toward the young woman with long light hair, who pants anxiously as she braces for the oncoming threat. Nearby, the serious young man with dark hair remains calm but resigned, acknowledging that their predicament cannot be helped. The group faces imminent danger, trapped and overwhelmed by the relentless monsters closing in. Mythilus calmly declares that she will act as the decoy, urging Shio to slip past while she draws the enemy's attention. Shio, slightly surprised but attentive, listens as the young man with long black hair reassures Mythilus, recalling the dungeon layout to support their plan. Shio explains that the right side is weaker and will rush the front to distract, leaving Mythilus to make the diversion work. The young woman urgently warns the man with the ponytail not to go alone, shouting that it's too dangerous. He questions her, confident he can outrun the monsters chasing them. She insists that going solo means certain death, pointing out the wall of monsters closing in, and anxiously asks what they should do next. The young woman urgently commands the young man with spiky hair to proceed after he offers to use magic to blast a hole ahead. Calm and focused, he assures her he can create an opening, ready to follow her lead in their desperate escape. The young woman with long light hair chants a calming wind spell, guiding the group toward the one safe path. Nearby, the young man with spiky hair explains to the light-haired man in the cloak that advanced spells take too long to cast and aren't practical now. The cloaked man smiles calmly, acknowledging that he can't unleash the kind of power that Alma can. Felicity stands firm, her expression resolute as she channels her magic. She casts the mid-tier wind spell Pass without a trace, unleashing a powerful air blast that surges toward the advancing horde of monstrous foes. The group of hostile creatures, led by the large muscular minotaur, is met with this sudden, forceful gust. The large minotaur monster roars fiercely as it lunges forward, swinging a massive weapon in attack. The young woman with long light hair urgently shouts at the man with the ponytail to act immediately. Nearby, the serious young man with short light hair reacts with tense surprise to the sudden assault inside the tunnel. The young woman with long light hair, clearly exhausted, struggles to keep going and admits she can't continue. The determined man with black hair tied back urges her to hold on tightly as he carries her on his back. Together, they press forward through the dim tunnel, pushing past her fatigue. Shio confidently insists that sticking close to the old Shio is the safer choice, surprising both the young woman and the man with long black hair and ponytail. The young woman reacts with shock and disbelief, shouting, "What?" As tension rises in the rocky tunnel, the serious young man listens intently, processing SHIO's unexpected advice. The young man with black hair carries the exhausted young woman on his back, his expression focused as he casts magic to clear their path. The young woman shouts in surprise and disbelief, her voice echoing urgently as they press forward through the tunnel. The young man with spiky hair salutes energetically, signaling their readiness to move forward. Beside him, Felicity Fenormo smiles confidently, while the serious young man with short hair stands alert and prepared. Together, they brace themselves inside the rocky tunnel, united in their determination to advance. The young man with short spiky hair carries the exhausted young woman on his back as they rush through a chaotic, rubble-strewn area filled with loud construction-like noise. The woman, distressed and crying, insists she doesn't understand what the other is saying. Her confusion clear despite the urgency. Determined, he presses forward, shielding her from the turmoil around them. The young man with short spiky hair confidently declares he's the fastest in the dungeon, even while carrying the young woman on his back, assuring they won't be caught. Meanwhile, she protests, wincing and asking him to stop hitting her because it hurts. Their tense but determined escape continues deep inside the dungeon. The young woman, distressed and unable to see anything, shouts to the determined young man carrying her on his back. He reassures her that they were running all along, while she questions if he hadn't promised to be the distraction. Despite her concerns, he presses forward, determined to keep them safe. The young woman urgently urges the young man carrying her to reconsider and retreat, warning of the danger posed by 3 ninjas nearby. He remains determined, insisting they should just head back despite the risks. The tension rises as they debate their next move while still on the run. The young man carries the exhausted young woman on his back as they run through the rocky dungeon corridor. She apologizes, explaining that her footsteps were so tired they barely made a sound. Despite her fatigue, he remains focused and determined to keep moving swiftly. The young man carries the exhausted woman on his back, calmly explaining his strategy for when stealth fails. He describes how he runs, catches and drags monsters, then ditches them at the right moment. Nearby, the large minotaur monster roars out, demanding to know about the beasts and their awareness. The young woman, panicked and crying, shouts urgently for everyone to run faster. The determined young man carries her swiftly on his back through the rocky dungeon tunnel, focused on escaping the imminent danger. The young man with short spiky hair carries the young woman with long light hair on his back as they dash through the ruins. He confidently declares that his speed will leave their pursuers far behind. The young woman shouts back excitedly, affirming his plan and calling him leader. Alma excitedly calls out to Felicity Fenormo, his energy infectious as he waves with a bright smile. Nearby, Mythilus reacts with alert surprise, sensing the urgency of the moment. The young man with short spiky hair expresses gratitude, thanking everyone for their help in making their escape smooth and safe within the cavern. The young man with black hair carries Felicity on his back, his expression serious as he speaks. Nearby, Alma and the young man with spiky hair exchange words about their fast escape, with Alma mentioning how close they came to dying and the other insisting they won't let enemies catch them. The young man with spiky hair then asks if Felicity should be put down to rest. The young man with dark hair firmly commands the one carrying the exhausted young woman to put her down. Despite the order, the man holding the locked gold chest insists they should open it first and then make their escape. The exhausted woman remains on the carrier's back, clearly worn out from their escape through the rocky cave tunnel. The young man with short spiky hair seriously explains to the exhausted young woman that they cannot leave without opening the treasure chest due to a magical contract binding it to the dungeon. She reacts with surprise and worry, realizing the challenge ahead. Their tense conversation underscores the urgency and complexity of their situation inside the dungeon. The man with short hair and earrings confidently insists that he has a 100% success rate at unlocking chests and demands they open the gold chest immediately. His determined expression leaves no room for doubt as he pushes forward with the plan. The tension rises as the group prepares to confront the magical lock binding their escape. Felicity, exhausted and pleading, urges the young man carrying her to wait, expressing her doubts about running any further. The determined young man clutches a locked chest firmly, insisting they must open it quickly despite her protests. Nearby, the man with glasses calmly comments, while the spiky-haired youth asks for silence, heightening the tension in the dungeon corridor. The young man with short spiky hair focuses intently as he holds the glowing treasure chest, declaring access. Suddenly, the young woman with long light hair gasps in shock, while the long-haired man behind her yells out in alarm. Tension rises as the chest begins to unlock amidst their fearful reactions. The young man with short spiky hair raises the glowing treasure chest above his head, preparing to unlock it as a tense countdown begins. The young woman with long light hair looks shocked and worried, fearing that the outcome might be disastrous. The atmosphere is thick with anticipation as the chest's magic is about to be revealed. The young man with short spiky hair, his back turned and face contorted in anger, shouts out in frustration, exclaiming that the situation is getting on his nerves. His intense outburst echoes through the tense atmosphere. The young woman, exhausted and leaning heavily on the man carrying her, pleads urgently for him to let her pass. The man, visibly frustrated and sweating, shouts loudly in exasperation, his anger clear as the treasure chest glows nearby. A surprised man in formal attire watches the tense exchange from a distance. The young man with short spiky hair holds up a glowing gem confidently, noting its striking resemblance to Felicity Fenormo's eye color. Felicity, overwhelmed and frightened, breaks into tears, recoiling from the gem in distress. Nearby, a serious young man with light hair watches the tense moment with surprise and concern. The young man with dark hair asks the long-haired adventurer if he can lead the way through the dungeon again. The long-haired man agrees cautiously, aware of the risk from monster waves. Meanwhile, the young woman looks frightened, but the young man holding the glowing gem reassures her that there's nothing to fear. Felicity Fenormo, visibly exhausted and worried, pleads with Mythilus to let her sit this one out. Admitting she doesn't feel well, Mythilus responds with hesitation, sharing a bad feeling about the situation ahead. The tension between caution and determination hangs heavy in the air. The young man with the sword explains that he has a permanent flaw causing bad luck, which often leads them into danger. The man with the ponytail questions if this means he's more likely to encounter monsters. Felicity, surprised, asks for clarification and seems to accept the explanation, while the man with the ponytail adds that this bad luck might attract magical beasts and complicate their pathfinding. The young man with spiky hair explains to the young woman how his bad luck causes them to run into so many monsters in the dungeon. She listens thoughtfully, then smiles, understanding his predicament. Their conversation reveals the frustration behind their challenging journey. The young man with the braid smiles confidently and tells the young woman to start singing now. She grabs his face in frustration, demanding an explanation and a heads-up. Suddenly, he begins singing unexpectedly, leaving her shocked and asking if she needs to let go. The young man with light hair begins singing a long, drawn-out note, filling the tense air with his voice. Felicity Fenormo stands nearby, sweating and visibly shocked, clearly unsettled by the sudden singing amidst the pressure of their situation. The rocky tunnel around them adds to the uneasy atmosphere as the melody echoes through the cave. The young man with black hair tied back reassures the worried young woman, explaining that he's recovering from their earlier setback and encourages her. Meanwhile, the young man with long hair and a braid seriously explains how using a singing voice acts like sonar to detect monsters, but warns that it also reveals their location. Suddenly, he shouts in alarm, declaring, "We're doomed!" with a wide-open mouth. The young man with spiky hair confidently volunteers to cover the rear as the group prepares to sprint through the tunnel. Aware that their enemies know their location, nearby, the young man with long black hair and a ponytail praises the clear voice guiding them, while the serious man with short hair and earrings warns that their situation is a double-edged sword. The young woman with long light hair looks nervous but quietly expresses her gratitude amid the tense escape plan. The young woman kneels firmly on the ground, her eyes wide with determination as she looks up at the young man with the long black hair tied in a ponytail. He returns her gaze with a serious, focused expression, silently acknowledging her resolve. The tension between them hints at the weight of the moment they face together. The young man with long black hair in a ponytail carries the exhausted young woman on his back, his face set with determination. He assures their leader, "Leave it to me," promising to move as fast as possible to keep them safe. The young woman, sweating and worn out, trusts him completely as they press forward. Our story continues as Felicity Fenormo, visibly shocked but relieved, speaks to the man with short hair and glasses inside the Adventurers Guild Hall. She asks if he found them, expressing her gratitude, while he smiles warmly, congratulating her and checking if she is all right after their ordeal. The moment captures a brief respite following their tense escape from the dungeon. Felicity Fenormo smiles brightly as she listens to the man with glasses explain how fortunate she is to have recruited 4 ninja adventurers in just 3 days. She reacts with surprise and disbelief, still processing how quickly things have moved despite being stuck for a week. Felicity Fenormo raises her fist with excitement, declaring that the first obstacle has been cleared. She motivates everyone to keep pushing forward and pay off their debt, raising both arms in determination as she faces the bustling street. Her confident spirit shines brightly amidst the town's cobblestone streets and passing pedestrians. The man with short light hair and glasses confidently announces the start of the true interview, setting a serious tone in the room. Around him, the three young men, one with short spiky hair, another with long black hair tied back, and the third with spiky hair, sit attentively on the floor, ready for what comes next. The atmosphere is tense but focused as the next phase begins. The man with short hair and glasses, seated authoritatively behind the judge's desk, addresses the young man with long black hair tied in a ponytail. He sternly reminds him that the sentence was finalized before the trial and demands a truthful explanation for being expelled from his last party. The tension in the courtroom rises as the young man listens intently, preparing to respond. The young man with spiky hair nervously explains his previous party and the technique called opening sword, primordial flame to the man with glasses sitting behind the desk. The man listens with a tired, slightly annoyed expression, remarking on the ninja job's loudness despite its stealthy reputation. The formal setting underscores the seriousness of their conversation. The young man with spiky hair holds a flaming sword confidently as he explains to the man with glasses how he repeatedly used the opening sword, primordial flame technique over 16 months. The man with glasses questions him about the frequency, curious if it was every 4 months. The spiky-haired youth smiles sheepishly, admitting his attitude ultimately led to the technique's end. The man with glasses sits behind his desk, calmly questioning SHIO about why he was expelled from his previous faction. SHIO, sitting cross-legged and composed, begins to explain his background in the blue faction of the Four Greats, detailing his physical condition and experiments. Meanwhile, someone watches silently from the side, unimpressed by the exchange. The man with short light hair and glasses sternly tells the young man with spiky hair that, for a ninja, he is far too loud, implying this is why he was kicked out. The young man responds hesitantly, offering to answer any questions while wondering why he seems to be the only one not feared. The young man with short spiky hair angrily slams a treasure chest against the wall, letting out a fierce scream. Felicity Fenormo recoils in shock, exclaiming, "Eek!" at his sudden outburst. He then firmly denies ever being kicked out of an adventurer party, defending himself with a serious expression. The young man with spiky hair explains his frustration and how his habit of breaking things when overthinking led to his contract not being renewed. Meanwhile, the young man with black hair tied back, wearing a jacket, questions what would happen if a gold chest appeared, recalling the earlier chaotic treasure chest incident. Nearby, the anxious young woman with long light hair watches the exchange, clearly worried. The young man with spiky hair laughs heartily, admitting that although his contracts sometimes end early, he always fulfills them. The long-haired adventurer, Melita-san, questions if he often bursts into song unexpectedly, calling it a good idea. Felicity Fenormo calmly places her papers on the table and reminds Melita-san of the reason given for the young man's dismissal. For a ninja, you're way too loud. The man with glasses presses his hands to his forehead, clearly stressed as he contemplates the situation. Nearby, the group of 4 men, each with distinct expressions ranging from calm to confident, stand together, their presence weighing heavily on him. The tension rises as he reflects on their formidable abilities and quirks, uncertain of how to proceed. The man with short light hair and glasses sits behind the desk, deep in thought with his head bowed and hands clasped, clearly stressed. Nearby, the young man with short spiky hair and a jacket points to himself as he speaks, while the young man with long black hair in a ponytail listens attentively with arms crossed. A young woman with long light hair and glasses watches thoughtfully, quietly murmuring, The young man with short spiky hair asks the group to explain their reasons for applying, starting with Alma. The young man with spiky hair confidently explains to Felicity Fenormo that he wants to properly use his strength and feels assured he can protect his party with Shio support. Felicity listens with curiosity, responding with a question about swimming in a sea in the backyard. Nearby, the young man with long black hair in a ponytail listens seriously to the conversation. The man with glasses sets his glasses down on the desk as he explains the conditions for using the young man's power during the trial run. Felicity Fenormo questions whether it truly matters where the power is used, her expression determined. The young man with spiky hair nervously responds, his eyes shining with hopeful excitement about finally being able to use his strength. The young man with long black hair in a ponytail explains to the man with glasses that he needs a lot of money to cover his food and running fuel expenses. Felicity Fenormo listens in shock, clearly surprised by this revelation. The man with glasses looks on, curious and questioning. Felicity wonders aloud if the location really matters, as long as the job pays well and doesn't involve hurting others. Oswin Senpai remains firm, saying his priorities haven't changed. He wants the highest paying work so he can dedicate his free time to research. The young man with long black hair acknowledges this, but questions why Oswin Senpai didn't stay at the academy if research was his goal. Felicity Fenormo firmly states that as long as the job pays well, the location doesn't matter. The adventurer with short spiky hair and the young man with spiky hair both agree that high hourly pay is the main concern. Felicity then asks if someone who tends to panic quickly could survive a doctoral program, showing her thoughtful yet assertive approach. Mythilus calmly explains that he has been wandering for years, mentioning that his parents are gone. Felicity Fenormo reacts with surprise and concern upon hearing about his debt. She firmly offers to help pay it off, but someone nearby firmly rejects her offer, insisting that she cannot help. The young man with dark hair firmly tells the young woman with long light hair that he cannot allow her to endure such hardship. She responds with a determined, "But, Mom," as a woman with a gentle smile encourages her to simply enjoy the moment and not worry. The scene captures a tense yet caring family exchange indoors, highlighting the young woman's resolve despite her guardian's concern. The young man with light hair nervously explains his decision to become a ninja, emphasizing that it's the best way to earn money. Felicity Fenormo, leaning forward excitedly on the desk, responds with enthusiasm, clearly impressed by his resolve. Their conversation takes place indoors, with curtains and a window softly framing the scene. The young man with short light hair leans heavily on the desk, his expression tense as he reveals the pressing family debt and the urgent need to earn money quickly. The adventurer with short spiky hair listens intently, his face showing curiosity and concern. Meanwhile, the young man with long black hair and a ponytail remains calm, eyes closed, quietly reflecting on the gravity of the situation. Felicity Fenormo reveals with a determined expression that she has a massive debt of 300 million darians, which must be paid by the end of next month. The weight of this financial burden clearly weighs heavily on her. The young man with short light hair yells out in shock, sweat dripping down his face, while the adventurer with short spiky hair also shouts, equally stunned. Nearby, the young man with long black hair and a ponytail stares wide-eyed, clearly taken aback. Amidst their alarm, Mythilus remains composed, offering a calm and confident smile that contrasts sharply with the others' reactions. Felicity Fenormo firmly declares that everyone is officially hired and no one will be fired on their first day. The young man with spiky hair looks shocked, while Shio stands serious and attentive. The young man with light hair smiles confidently, showing a sense of reassurance amidst the tension. Felicity Fenormo raises her fist and shouts with determination, rallying the group to give their all despite their dire financial situation. The adventurers around her listen intently, their serious and focused expressions showing they are ready to face the challenges ahead together. The tension in the room is palpable, but so is the resolve to push forward as a team.